kettlebell swings are an S tier exercise. They're also pretty advanced, and I see a lot of people making some mistakes with them. So I want to help you smooth out those mistakes so you can do kettlebell swings properly and safely and experience all the benefits that kettlebell swings provide. So we're going to go over some prep exercises to make sure that, hey, if you've never done a kettlebell swing before, let's make sure that you can do these moves properly first. So we're going to show some prep exercises. We're going to go over the common mistakes that I see with people's form. And I'm also going to give you a beginner level kettlebell exercise to get you swinging starting, maybe not today, but starting at some point. So let's start off with the prep exercises. These are important first because we want to make sure that you can move properly. Kettlebell swings are a hip dominant movement. It's like, they call it the sippy chicken. You know that bird that dips its beak into the water going up and down? That's exactly what a kettlebell swing moves like. That bird hinges from its hips, dips its beak into the water, and then stands right back up again. That's what we're looking for with a kettlebell swing. So we want to make sure that you can move at your hips properly. So here's what you can do. You can get to a wall or a pole. I'm going to show you from a pole just so that way you can kind of see what this is looking like from a side view. So I'm going to get next to a pole right here. I'm about a foot, maybe a foot and a half away. Soften up those knees. We don't want those knees locked out. Think soft knees. From here, we want to push our hips back. Try to push your hips back so you can touch the pole or the wall behind you, then stand up. Notice the position of my arms. I'm keeping my arms back so that way I don't round my back like this. It's not about getting low right there. It's about pushing your hips back, all right? Now your weight, you might feel like more of your weight is on your heels. That is totally fine, all right? We still want to try to dig our toes into the ground while we're doing this movement. Another thing I would suggest is when you're trying this, that you can point your chest forward while doing this movement. So I have a mirror to my side. If you can stand in front of a mirror, let's get in that hinge position and look forward. If you have a logo on your shirt, you should be able to see your logo or nipples right there. So if I didn't have my shirt off, you'd be able to see those nips. Stand up. We want to think about having a proud chest because if we can't see our chest, that means that our upper back is rounded. Shoulders back, think proud chest, boom. So start off with that, a hinge movement. Just doing the hinge itself. Now, once you've got that nailed, here's an exercise that you can start with. It's called a pull through. You could either use a strong resistance band or a cable machine. We want to set it up, move this kettlebell out of the way, so it's like just below hip height. We're going to step over the band. Again, you could use a cable for this, putting on the handles or using a rope attachment. We're going to step out. So that way we have some tension and we can kind of lean forward almost into this, okay? So holding on to this, we want to keep our arms straight, hinge those hips. Now you can see this band is pulling my arms through the hips, making sure your back is flat. We're going to squeeze the butt right here to stand straight up. Slowly bring it down. Allow the band to pull the arms to the hips. Try not to round. We're not going back like this. Think proud chest. So you can see my chest right here. Squeeze the glutes. Stand nice and tall. Right there. All right. You're going to want to do about 12 to 15 reps at a pretty decent weight. So a weight that pulls you back to where you can feel your glutes and hamstrings. You feel a stretch in your hamstrings and you should feel your glutes working as you stand up. So that's the second prep exercise, is a pull through using either a band or a resistance cable machine. Another prep exercise are just doing deadlifts. So if you've never done a deadlift before, this is a necessary step before doing kettlebell swings. Ideally, use a kettlebell so that you can be in the same stance. So stand directly over the kettlebell, feet about hip width apart, think soft knees, same thing. we're moving at those hips, all right? Our back isn't rounded. We're gonna point the chest forward. Weight, most of the weight's gonna be on the heels, but still put those toes into the ground. Stand straight up, nice and tall. Push those hips back, bend the knees slightly, tap the kettlebell to the floor. So get really good at mastering kettlebell deadlifts and pull-throughs. The thing about pull-throughs are, they're gonna teach you where your arms need to be when doing the kettlebell swing. So 3 prep exercises. Number 1, making sure that we get our hinge movement down. Number 2, pull-throughs. And number 3, deadlifts. If you've never done those before, give those a try before you start the kettlebell swing variation that I'm gonna plug in at the end. Let's talk about the common mistakes that I see. There are 3 common mistakes that I see people doing with kettlebell swings. I'm going to change out this kettlebell because this is about 100 pounds, and I'm gonna grab a lighter kettlebell here. Because last thing I wanna do is show you the mistakes with a heavy kettlebell and screw some things up. We don't want that. Common mistake number 1 is people are overarching. So when they're swinging the kettlebell, they're leaning back like this. They're overextending, really trying to propel that kettlebell forward. What that's gonna do is it's putting a little more pressure on your lower back, and we don't want that. Deadlifts are a great lower back strengthening exercise, but for overarching, we're gonna be putting too much pressure on the vertebra. So what we wanna do is instead think, there's 2 cues I wanna give you here. Stand tall is cue number 1. Second cue is push the floor down. So if we think about it, okay? If I'm overarching, I'm not as tall as if I stood nice and tall. You can see the difference. If I'm here, my head is up here. If I lean back, I'm now shorter. I'm not as tall as if I'm up here. If that cue doesn't work for you, try the second cue, which is push the floor down. So when I have the kettlebell here in the back swing, my action is to push the floor down. When I push the floor down, your body stands straight up. So try those out. If you find yourself overarching, think stand tall, push the floor down. Give that a try. And for these corrections, unless you have a coach or somebody watching you, you may not know the mistakes that you're making. And trust me, you don't want to go to the points where you feel the mistakes. Take a video of yourself. A lot of these mistakes can be seen from the side view. So take a video of yourself, be your own coach, and assess your form on this kettlebell swing. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me and be like, hey coach, here's my form. What can you help me with? How can I improve my kettlebell swing? More than happy to answer that for you. So that's mistake number 1, overarching. We can fix that by either standing tall or pushing the floor down. Those are the cues. Another one that I see is people are doing too low of a swing. So what that means is they're bringing the kettlebell down to here. So they're letting it fall below their knees, getting the kettlebell almost to the floor. That's gonna place a little more pressure on the lower back and your groin. Ideally, we want to catch the kettlebell high in our crotch. So instead of having the kettlebell down here, we want the kettlebell to be up here, right? You should be able to like scratch your butt in that position, okay? So that's where the kettlebell wants to be. So we want to be high in the crotch like this versus being too low. So how do we fix that? There are 2 things that we can do there. So number 1, we can make the kettlebell longer. Grab a towel. Place the towel around the kettlebell. So now, if I go too low, the kettlebell hits the floor. If I keep those hands right inside the crotch, you'll be able to perform the swing. Again, if we go too low, look what happens. Kettlebell hits the floor. And we don't want that. Make sure you're using a lighter kettlebell and focus on just getting it high in the crotch rather than swinging it as high as you can. Because it's on a towel, it's gonna be a little less stable, especially at the end point. So again, grab a towel. This gives me about an extra foot of length in each hand. Focus on just getting it high up in the hips. All right, that works for most people. And I understand if you're shorter, it may not work too much. You might need to find a smaller towel. Another thing you can do, and don't worry, I'm going to show some different alternations there because I know people have different leg length, is to stand over a bench. All right, so I'm going to lift up my shorts because they're a little big in the crotch area. We're going to stand right over the bench, and same thing. We're just trying to swing it. Right there. Because guess what happens? If we go too low, it's going to hit the bench. Let's say you're a little shorter and the bench just comes up too high and you can't even fit the kettlebell between your hips. We can use a ball. Basically anything that raises the surface of the floor and shortens the distance between the ground and your hips to give you that space to bring the kettlebell through is going to be helpful. So I've got a large Dyna ball right here. So now if I'm doing swings, I have to get it high in my crotch because if I go too low, whoop, it's going to hit the ball. So try those out. Again, we want the kettlebell to be here, high in the crotch, as if we can scratch our butt between our legs, stand tall, pushing the floor down to propel the kettlebell forward. That is the second common mistake. The third mistake I see, and it kind of goes hand in hand with catching it too low, is people rounding their backs while doing this. So what they'll do is they'll get the kettlebell and they round their backs like they're trying to look through their hips. All right. Now, ideally when we're doing this, we want to have a nice straight spine. That means the head as well. So we want to keep our chin tucked as we're doing these, all right? For this one, we're going to change that slightly and we're going to have you look forward at a mirror because your head is going to dictate how the rest of your spine is organized. So if we can extend our head and look up, so I have a mirror right here in front of me and I'll show you facing the front angle as well so you can get a better look at this. All right, so if I look forward, now I can visibly see my chest. I know my back is flat. I'm looking forward. Now if I do kettlebell swings here, looking at myself in a mirror, now I can see my chest. And if I can see my chest, then it's not possible for my back to be rounded. Let me show you from the front here, all right? So if your back is rounded, because your chin is tucked too much and you're looking between your hips, you're not really gonna see my chest. Versus if I look forward, now you're able to see my chest. So what you can think is, for this drill, 2 cues. Cue number 1, look forward. Cue number 2, proud chest. All right, so give that a try if you notice in your form that your back is rounding like this. Those are the 3 most common mistakes that I see. There are more mistakes that have to do with timing of the kettlebell swing because yes, timing is also pretty important. We got time. Let's actually go into timing for the swing. So there's actually going to be a point of relaxation when doing the kettlebell swing. So when I pull it up, boom, I stand tall. The whole time the kettlebell's right here, I'm relatively relaxed. The point for me to move my hips is when I feel the kettlebell swing downwards. Once it's next to my hips, I bring it between the legs. Once it's back here and I feel all that load in the stretch in my hamstrings, that's the cue, boom, to stand up. So timing is also important. You want to move with the kettlebell. All right, while you are moving the kettlebell, you want to move with it, creating that swing movement. All right, so make sure your timing is on point with this as well. Again, if you have any questions about form, kettlebell swings, reach out to me because there's so much more that I could teach on this movement. So we've went through some prep exercises, common mistakes, how to fix them. Now it's time to show you a beginner level kettlebell swing exercise. Before you just start doing kettlebell swings for reps, I highly recommend you do this variation, which is called the dead stop kettlebell swing. So this is a really heavy kettlebell. It's about 96 pounds. I do not suggest you start with heavy. Start with like a 18, 26, at most 35-pound kettlebell, nothing more than that. I'm just showing with a heavy weight because it requires me to do the movement to the best of my abilities. Because if I don't have good form, this bell isn't moving, it's not gonna swing. So, dead stop kettlebell swings. We're gonna sit up with our feet about hip width apart. Let me show you from this little side front view. So feet are about shoulder width apart, allowing you enough space to bring your arms between your hips. All right, so knees are slightly bent. I got most of the weight on my heels. What I want you to do is I want you to reach for that kettlebell, have a big reach. Pull the handle towards you. All right, now you can see my back is flat, my hips are pushed back, and I have a nice proud chest. So the action is to pull it. Think hike, like a center in football, snapping the football back. We want to hike the kettlebell and then stand tall. So I'm going to hike the kettlebell back, stand tall, let it swing between the legs, tap it to the floor. That's one rep. Hike, stand, down swing, tap it to the floor. Hike, stand, hike, stand. Right there. Again, try not to go super heavy with this at the start. Do about 5 to 10 reps to begin with, and I would say do more sets. So instead of doing like 3 sets of 15 reps, start with like 5 sets of 5 to 10 reps to be able to get more work done. Also, be aware of how you're feeling. If you're tired and you feel like you don't have the oomph to push this, don't do it. I suggest that you build this in to your workout routine, doing it fresh. So that would be after your warm-up and maybe after your first set of exercises. So that way you can do this with good form. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions at all about the kettlebell swing, how to do it properly, and how to progress it, I'm here to help. Because there are so many more things. We do single arm swings, we do figure 8 swings, pendulum swings, so many different variations to the swing exercise that we could do. But I wanted to show you how you can start swinging safely and effectively to start reaping the benefits of this amazing exercise. Got any questions? You know what to do. Reach out, shoot a comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.